Good evening, everyone. Time for episode 24 of the Drums of Doom, part 2 of the Duaredheim staff saga, by me, starting where we left off on page 294, the 17th of October, 2020. Might be rereading a few lines, but that'll be fine. Okay. Leander slashed viciously at his rightmost attacker, but the cunning beast caught his sword arm at the wrist with its prehensile feet, and their ascent continued. Karina struggled wildly, nearly escaping from one of them. They dragged her through the opening nonetheless. Leander fought them, but paid for it with his blood. The gargoyles threw them toward the back of what resembled nothing more than a cluttered attic. Boxes, junk, and dusty treasures were haphazardly intermingled with the bones of the gargoyles' past victims. The four beasts, with flesh as gray and lifeless as death, razor-like talons, and eyes both hungry and sinister, advanced. Crouching low, like birds of prey ready to strike, they blocked their escape. Karina stood quickly, looking for some weapon. She got lucky. Lying with the skeletal remains of its previous owner, she found a sword still in its scabbard and wasted no time in freeing it. Kicking nearby debris toward her assailants, she prepared to fight. Leander was a little slower, a bit more stunned. He rose just as the gargoyles rushed in. Beneath them all, the battle raged. The remaining creatures landed, seeming to prefer fighting from the ground. "Back to back," Carmen ordered, "so the bastards can't take us." Tarek was soon behind her, matching her every move. His sword blazed with fire, seeming to crave the blood of their enemies. The gargoyles stalked them, 6 feet tall, hunchbacked and fearless. Wasting no time, they attacked. They were a team now, one soldier understanding the other with the near intimacy of lovers, paladin and ranger fighting back to back, one with bow and the other with sword. "I've got this one," Tarek said, spinning hard to his left. "See what you can do to help Karina." Looking toward the opening, Carmen could still see the back of one of them. She drew, aimed, and loosed. The bolt blasted through the monster's chest, and in an instant it crumpled into dust. Eerily, a new gargoyle formed atop the first pillar, all stone and still, as it first had been. "I need some help up here," Karina shouted. "Our swords don't hurt them. Quickly!" Tarek held his enemy at bay. The gargoyle was a savvy fighter and swift to avoid his killing blows, but neither could it bypass Tarek's defenses. Carmen drew, turned, and kneeled. Tarek smiled and sidestepped. "Block this." The beast tried to leap away, albeit too late, as her arrow blasted it to ashes. "Hurry, Carmen. We've got to help them." "Beware the center of the room," Carmen yelled after a moment of inspiration. "The trap is there." "How do we get up there?" Tarek asked. "I think that I can help," Dow said. "Gentlemen, keep them off of me." Dartin defended his right flank and Kerr his left. "Less talk and more magic, lad," Kerr said. "We'll do the rest." The gargoyles worked hard to stop them, but they were either stung by dwarven steel and hurled back, or grappled by a stalwart priest. Neither side gave quarter. The time for talk had ended. Behind them, near the rear door, Kalor dueled with a third monster. His gnomish blades seemed to hunger for these foes, emitting an excited hum, like the sound of a far-off symphony brought to one's ears by the wind. Dow raised his right hand, palm toward heaven, and with his left he coiled the leather tie of his shirt around his index finger. Aiming for the feet of his waiting friends, he spoke these words: "Exsurgo sursum ab terra in calum." Carmen immediately began rising up away from the floor. She was off balance and disoriented for a moment, but she recovered quickly. A few seconds passed, and Dow was able to affect Tarek as well. Soon they would reach the ceiling. The gargoyles around them hissed at the now floating invaders. They battled on, but they were clearly torn between finishing their enemies on the ground or taking wing against those seeking to rescue their helpless captives. Their combat joined. D'Artin began to hear a song, far off at first, and then rising in volume until it became clear. It was not so loud that it drowned out all sound, but rather a melody from within, echoing through his mind alone. The tune roused his spirit, and he felt more powerful and vigorous than he had ever felt before. His sword, normally somewhat weighty, seemed somehow lighter, and his armor was now a barely noticeable burden. Ordinarily, facing a horror as unnatural as the gargoyle would have filled his heart with fear, and with luck he would have courageously transformed that emotion into action. This time things were strangely different. He was unafraid, all silent calm within, fighting detachedly with a logic and knowledge of swordscraft that he had never before known. The only problem was that his well-forged cold steel blade was without enchantment. When he struck the gargoyles, his blade would either bounce off their flesh like they were made of stone, or pass through them, as if they were mere illusions. The monster's blows carried deadly weight, but despite their razor-sharp claws, D'Artin's armor proved invincible, and not even a scratch could they leave upon it. Frustrated, they sought to strike at his unprotected throat or to damage his hands. Darkroth, he commanded, and his helm sealed around his neck. With an instinct that he never knew that he had, he used his well-armored forearms to fend off their rending claws, but without magic, he knew not how he could win. "Fear not," said Kerr, for he had dispatched his enemy with a tremendous blow of his axe, and rushed in to fight by his side. "Take my sword," he said, tossing it to D'Artin without a thought. "It is made from mithril steel, and may well hold dwarven magic." The priest was somehow able to sheathe his sword and catch Kerr's blade in one fluid motion, and all in the heat of battle. Undaunted, the gargoyle attacked. Kerr accepted its frenzied, painful blows without complaint, patiently chambering his axe and swinging it cross-body, nearly eviscerating the monster. The gargoyle, gutted, leaped to wing, but D'Artin's downward cut finished it the next instant. Kalor stung his opponent several times, and green blood ebbed from it. Soon, the gargoyle realized that it would soon face 4 opponents, and so it then chose to take wing and help its comrades above. Kalor hurled his dagger, striking his opponent in the neck, slowing its escape but not finishing it. The 4th monster hurtled toward Carmen. Drawing her bow, a mystical arrow formed. Dao's jet of scorching fire took it first, consuming it. He was fully engrossed in his power now, his mind channeling the energies around him, organizing the incantations of his studies, seeking to be ever ready with the most useful spell. Above them, new gargoyles had formed atop of the pillars, replacing each of those that they destroyed. "Are you all right, Keg?" "It's nothing," Kerr said. "We had best be after Karina and Ash." "Beware the pressure plate near the center of the room," Dao said. "I am certain that these things will reanimate if we set it off again." The muffled sounds of a great skirmish ensued above them. "Dao," D'Artin said, "can you get us up to that attic?" "Sorry, boys. Those are my only spells of levitation, and I can't recast any more until I've had time to rest and study my Book of Shadows." "I don't think that it's going to matter," Kalo said. "Look there." It was then that Carmen reached the opening. Floating silently upward, she held her bow at full draw, and Tarek was just beneath her. Her arrow flashed away, revealing the space around her, and she quickly prepared another. Karina and Leander were fighting like berserks, but their blows were ineffective. Outnumbered and nearly defenseless, they cut and kicked through debris and parried until they could retreat no further. The gargoyles smiled wickedly at them, their clawed hands open and eager, their mouths wet with the anticipation of a feast. Rushing in, 2 of them took Leander to the ground, their mouths seeking his throat. Carmen's streaking missile blasted away the 3rd. Karina strove to pull one beast off him, but it shoved her away in contempt. Carmen looked for an opening, but they were now a tangle of wrestling bodies, and she had no clear shot. Thinking quickly, Tarek threw his sword, hilt first, toward Karina. She wasted no time in catching it up. With the touch of her hand, its blade rippled with flames. Very angry but in complete control, she dispatched the remaining gargoyles before they could rise to meet her. Leander was hurt but still conscious. Once he knew that his attackers were gone, he lay down and tried to move no more. "That was a close one," Karina said to him. "You don't look so good." Punctured and torn by both teeth and claws, his arms screamed with pain when he tried to move them. "I don't feel so good. I'm a mess." "We'll get you patched up. It doesn't look like they severed anything major." "Let's get him out of here," Carmen said. "We can bandage him up down below." "Only one problem," Tarek said, "getting down. We have no rope." "Maybe there's some up here," Karina said. "There are all kinds of things lying around." Nevertheless, search as they might, they found no rope. They did, however, find 4 swords of elven make, an assortment of clothes and armor, 3 rings, 2 vials filled with liquid, one white and the other gold, and a large sack filled with gold coins. The skeletal remains of at least 4 victims lay strewn about the room around them. The equipment had presumably been theirs. They dispersed the gear among themselves and wrapped Leander's arms with pieces of a torn shirt that they found. "Kalor," Tarek called, "we have no way to get down. Any suggestions?" "Fear not," Dow replied. "I have just the thing. Once I cast my spell, you may jump down without fear. You will float to the ground as softly as falling leaves." Standing now below them, but away from the hazardous pressure plate, he placed his backpack on the floor. "When you jump," he said, "aim your landing here, and my spell will catch you. Wait for my signal." Backing up, he raised his hands once more and channeled his power. "Pluma, precipito," he chanted. "Quickly now." Unsure as they were, they had to trust in Dow's invisible magic. "I'll go first," Tarek said. "I have the best chance of making this fall." "Good luck," Carmen said as he took the plunge. But just as Dow had said, some invisible net caught him, and he floated the last 10 feet to the ground without harm. One by one they then followed him, and soon they had all reached the ground. "Amazing," Tarek said in astonishment. "I was a little bit worried there." "Sorry," Dow replied, "but I didn't have time to test it before now." "Didn't have time to test it?" "Well, it worked." "Worked," says he, Carr said, spitting the blood out of his swollen mouth and laughing aloud. "We did well in the fight. Let's get bandaged up and take a look at what we found." "And the chest too," Carmen said. "But carefully, Kalor." "Of course, my lady," he said, while imitating Dow's previous bow to perfection. "Very funny. Tarek, go with him." The chest was small, with silver inlaid walls and frames of gold. Well-made locks dangled from their latches. "What do you think, Kalor?" "There are no magical runes warding it," Kalor said while looking through his crystal. "The locks look simple enough. I'll just have to watch out for any hidden traps." Removing his tools from his pack, he organized them on the floor before himself and went to work. The locks were a simple and old design, and he easily picked them. Prying up the lid ever so gently, he looked for the telltale signs of tampering. Hidden wires, springs, or levers might indicate that a deadly trap awaited them inside. Searching both chests well, he found none. Nothing left to do now but open them. "Stand back. I'm going to use the point of my sword." Lifting the latches with his weapon, he slowly opened the lids. A king's ransom of coins and jewels filled one, and the other held nothing but a coil of rope and a rolled-up parchment. Tarek knelt beside the loaded chest. "Unbelievable. I wonder how many years have passed since this was put here." "I don't think that anyone's been here for a long time, Tarek. Hold on." Kalor warned as Tarek was about to dip his hands into the treasure. "There may still be some trap hidden beneath those coins. What do you suggest? Put your gloves on and take each coin out one by one. It's what any good thief would have to do. If you see anything strange, stop." Tarek did as instructed, slowly and patiently, while Kalor examined the rope. Its strands were black and silver, and it was made of some strange fiber, not hemp to be sure. They resembled nothing more than spider's silk, tiny, strong, supple, and intricately woven. The whole thing was about 50 feet in length, but weighed little more than 5 pounds. It was truly a treasure to behold. The parchment lay coiled inside of a large ring of white gold, sized for wide fingers, like those of a dwarf or a large human. Carefully unrolling it, he found it was old but well preserved. Surprisingly, it was written in common Firmish. Greetings. If you are reading this, then you have succeeded in defeating the gargoyles and uncovered my treasure. I have enchanted this document so that it will translate my words for whoever should read it in the ages to come. My city is falling, beset upon by a terrible evil, and my remaining days are few. Perhaps the small items that I leave here will be of some help to you. Doc Elfar blacksmiths created the rope, a master work. It will magically extend to grasp some distant object and release that object upon command. The trigger words are simple: reach and hold, and release your grasp. Otherwise, the rope is normal, but unusually strong. This ring fits dwarven fingers and offers protection from fire. The last of my wealth rests in the second chest, including a dagger from my adventuring days. If thrown, and it fails to hit its mark, it will return to the hands of its wielder. I go now to lie down and rest. My liege lord has taken ill, and a terrible madness is upon him. I fear that he will pull the city down upon himself and all of his people. I have tried to reason with him, but he no longer hears my words. I am far too old and feeble to act against him, and so, helpless, I go to my deathbed. Best wishes, Dravian Ilorian, fourth wizard of the city. It's a note from the owner of this chest, Tarek, Kalor said. From what he says, this was once part of a great city. If it was, then its days of glory are long past. Perhaps this room was once a hall in a mighty castle, sucked into the earth by forces we cannot imagine. Or else this city was always under earth, Kalor surmised, perhaps one of the earliest Doc Elfar settlements. Somehow I don't think so, Tarek said, plucking away another layer of coins. But it's just a feeling. According to the wizard, there should be a dagger inside that chest. Working their way through the treasure, they soon uncovered an exquisite gold-handled dagger in a sheath of jade. They drew it out. Its blade was double-edged, with a pyramid-shaped point and deep blood grooves. Completely untarnished, it was sharp enough for shaving. It looks like the blade of a master thief, Tarek said. Perhaps you should carry it. Kalor took the knife from him and examined it. There is still some magic left in it, Kalor said. Let's test it. Wasting no time, he grasped it by the flat of the blade and hurled it into an empty part of the room. It flew farther than any normal dagger, but as there was nothing there to strike, it circled wide like a boomerang and then returned hilt first into his throwing hand. I've never seen such a thing before, Tarek replied in wonder. Maybe I shouldn't have been so quick to offer it up. Not a chance, Kalor said, unless Carmen orders it. Never fear, Kalor, my father's knives are enough for me. Let's help the others with the rest of the things that we found. Karina had assembled all their newfound gear in a small circle, and Carmen was dressing Leander's arms as best as she could with what they had. Atran Daru was helping me to learn the druidic way, Leander said, while gritting his teeth against the pain. If I could find some pieces of earth above, a ray of sunshine, and a maiden's tears, then I could heal myself. The earth above is easy, Acolyte Kerr said. I still have some keg porter wine, only a few precious sips, but much of the soil that we use is carried underground from the valley. The essence of earth is in every drop of my father's wine. It just might work, Leander said hopefully. The ray of sunshine is also easy, Tao replied. Just take one look into Karina's eyes. Forever will the sun shine there. Her heart is all fire and sun and love. Her soul is passion and the fury of the storm. You want sunshine, Druid? Just sit in the light and peer into her eyes. But beware, lest your heart be lost like mine. But what about a maiden's tears? Just sit and look, Druid, Tao said. Wet your lips with keg porter wine and start your spell. I shall produce your tears in short order. It was then that Dal began to sing, and until that day, none of them had ever heard the young elf sing thus. His song was a blend of old and new, a tribute to the heavens and their blessings. He often sang the song when he was tending his crops in Nordtown. His melody would urge the corn to grow tall and strong, the tomatoes thick and fat, and tell the rabbits to eat a bit of this and not that. Karina knew his song well. She had heard it 100 times and more. It made her long for the fields of her home, the comfort of her table and the warmth of her hearth, a place now lost forever in time. All that it was now was a memory, a place of dreams and a family to come, now ruined, smashed, and burned. She started crying tears like rain. Leander held out his hand and caught some. Looking into her eyes, he sprinted merrily through her fields of gold, stared in wonder at a sky of endless blue, and felt the warmth of rays upon rays of sunshine. With his mind's eye, he caught some of them up. Mixing them with maiden's tears in 2 sips filled with the essence of earth, his magic was born. No longer was he merely a student among druids. Nay, he now knew the pathway to nature's power. With the ancient words he spoke to the wind, to the sun, and to the moon. Before their eyes his wounds began to close, miraculously healing. With a touch he eased Kerr's own pain, healing his torn lip and most of his worst cuts and bruises. He wanted to go on, but there was only so much power left in 2 sips of keg porter wine, and the magic of his healing spell soon faded. "Well done, lad," Kerr said. "What do you think of that? It is no wonder that your best friend is also a priest." "I am no longer an acolyte," Leander proclaimed. "Call me Druid. I have passed the first test." "Very well, Druid," Kerr said. "Just don't you go getting too big for your britches." "Never." "Good. And I hope that you'll be able to do that again someday. I think that we're going to need it." "Are you all right, Karina?" Leander asked. "I couldn't have done it without you." "It's okay. I'm happy and sad all at once. I had almost forgotten why we came down here in the first place and what it is that we are protecting. If ever we return home again, perhaps we can begin again." "Of course, my love," Dal said. "But for now, Lady Karina, may I have this dance?" "Why, Mr. Greylinks, I would be delighted." Taking his hand, he hoisted her to her feet, and they began to waltz around the hall as if the battle had never been. "Mind the pressure plate," Kalor warned, but Dal's rising voice cut short his words. As he filled the chamber with his song of love, his song for her, and each of them could not help but to cry tears of joy themselves. Leander had heard well Dal's previous words, and his longing for Robin struck him like a knife through his heart. In his wisdom, he accepted it, even reveling in it victoriously, for his love was still there, where it had forever been, never lost. "Well, Kalor," he said, wiping away his tears, "what have we found?" "It is an incredible find, Ash," Kalor said. "Dal, I believe that the inscription on the blades and scabbards are in ancient Elven. Can you read them?" "Let me see, Kalor," Dal replied thoughtfully, taking one of them up. Carefully examining both sword and scabbard, he was awestruck at what they had found. It was a masterwork, forged of an alloy lighter than steel, with a slender, double-edged and slightly upswept blade. Eelskin wrapped the down-swept hilt, capped with a round, bejeweled counterweight. The handguard was circular, 4 inches in diameter, and adorned with the casting of a dragon chasing its tail. Runes covered the entire blade and scabbard in a mirror image of one another. The inscription says that this is the sword of the north wind, sovereign against worms of frost. It is a dragon slayer. "That explains why it didn't work against the gargoyles," Karina said. "Not exactly. The runes etched into the blade match those on the scabbard. I believe that they are matching sets, and that their power will only manifest if the wielder possesses both the sword and its scabbard," Dow explained. "So that only the rightful owner of the sword could gain its powers on the battlefield." "Exactly. And what about the other 3, Kalor asked. Dal then studied them all and discovered that they were all of similar design. The second sword is the sword of the east wind, sovereign against worms of black. The third is the sword of the south wind, bane to all fireworms, and all three are dragon slayers. The fourth blade is special. It is the sword of the west wind, and it is a holy blade, blessed against evil. It is the sword of a paladin. These three rings hold magic as well, Kalor said, and each of them bears runes similar to the swords. Dao then took them up one by one and studied them. The rings are matched to the swords, Dao said. The ring of the north wind protects the wearer against the cold, deadly breath of frost dragons. The ring of the east wind defends its owner against the vile acid spray of a black worm. The ring of the south wind renders its bearer immune to fire, and the ring of the west shields its possessor like a suit of armor. And what of these potions? Potions are difficult to identify, Dao said. My father recommended carefully testing the odor, in the hopes that some hint as to its function will come to mind. Otherwise, a tiny sample, no more than a wetting of a fingertip, may be applied to the tongue. Barring this, there is no way to tell except through extensive alchemical research. Well, here goes, Kalor said while uncorking and testing the odor of the white-colored potion. Use your imagination, Dao urged. Trust in your instincts. I somehow feel bigger, as if I am growing. I have heard of such potions of expansion, Dao said. Whoever drinks this mixture will probably double in size. For how long? Most potions only last for a few minutes to a few hours at most, but there is no way to be sure. Kalor then uncorked and smelled the gold potion. I am not sure, but it makes me feel more powerful, invincible. Probably a warrior's potion. I have heard that such mixtures can temporarily increase the endurance and power of a fighter. Lastly, they passed the small mace and shield between them. They are small, size for a gnome or a dwarf, and highly enchanted, Kalor said. But without runes, Dao considered. We'll have to wait and see just what properties they might have. Take them, Kalor, Carmen said. You and Kerr are the only ones who might be able to use them. I'll take them, Kalor said, but I'm not sure about using the mace. We can't afford to take anything for granted, Carmen replied. We need to use every advantage that we can find. I only wish that we had found some food, Karina said. I've never been so hungry in my life. Well, Kerr, Carmen said, what do dwarves eat when they are down here? There are many edible creatures down here, Kerr answered, including stoneworms and most cave spiders. If you know what to look for, you can eat many of the mushrooms and lichens as well. Unfortunately, there are also vast expanses of underearth without life of any kind. All we can do now is keep hunting and hope. That's promising, Karina said flatly. We should focus on what we have, Tarek said. We have already encountered many beasts down here that defy normal steel. Now we should finally be able to outfit everyone with a magical blade. But who will wield which sword? Leander asked. Both Kerr's axe and sword are fine weapons, Carmen said, and Kalor's blades have already proven themselves. And I have flame, Tarek said, in the blades of my father. All I know, Karina declared, is that I don't want to be so helplessly unarmed again. Then I say, Kerr said, that Karina should get the first choice. Agreed, everyone answered unanimously. Karina went from one sword to the other, her right hand touching her chin, considering. Then I claim the sword of the north wind, Karina said. If we make it through this, we're sure to end up in the frigid Northland again, and I will be ready. Taking up the weapon, she ran her sword belt through the scabbard loop, set it over her left hip, and tested its weight. Satisfied, she grasped its hilt in her right hand and then drew her sword in a lightning-fast draw. It's a fine blade. Sheathing it, she smiled broadly. Now you must claim the ring as well, Dao said. You now carry the weapons of the guardian of the north wind. Wield them well, my love. I shall. And what about you, Dao? Carmen asked. I shall wait until last, he said. My father's magic will have to stand our tests until then. That's where we'll end today's episode. The top of page 307. We will begin again with episode 25. Thank you for listening. Have a great night. And as always, Read the Drums of Doom, Part 2 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga by me. Thank you and have a great night.